Gwen Ditmar, and I am a coach and a healer for executives, entrepreneurs, and also regular people. And so a little bit about who I am and what I do is that who I am now and how I show up in the world is very different than how I used to show up in the world. So I'm just going to share a little bit about that. So how I used to show up in the world is I was very introverted, very quiet, very shy. This would have never been something I would have been able to do. And I found myself in a really great career for my personality. I worked in pharmaceutical, biotech, and device research. I usually sat in a room all by myself. It was very detail-oriented. It was very analytical, very logical work. And it also required a lot of perfection, which was a reflection of how I treated myself. And it also looked through health and healing from a very allopathic lens of symptoms and problems and fixing them. And that really felt great for me at that time in my life. I really wanted to figure things out, fix it, tie it up in a little box, and move on. And that worked really well for a long time until it stopped working. And so I was distracted when that shift started to happen. I would be distracted with some thoughts while I was waiting on planes, while I was sitting in elevators, eating dinner alone, working alone. And those questions that would pop up were, who am I? What is my purpose, and what am I actually doing here, and is this all there really is? I worked a lot, I traveled a lot, I succeeded a lot, and I rose up the corporate ladder, but I was wondering, is this all there really is? And so, these questions started to create this juxtapose inside of me where I was like, doing this very logical work, but having this other part of me that was opening up and looking for a deeper meaning. So these deeper meanings could not be answered with logic. They couldn't be answered with perfection, and they weren't something to be fixed. So that kind of started to create a little bit of a compartmentalization inside of me and inside of my life. So I was starting to seek over here, but stay very grounded in work and perfection and analysis over here. But as anybody knows, being compartmentalized and living in silos can start to create a huge disconnect inside of us. It can start to create a void, and if that void is already there, it just starts to make it even bigger. And so what happened for me was as any researcher would do, I decided let's start to run some experiments on myself and collect data and see what happens instead of being in fear. And so I delved into the first level, which is really the mind, the mental. So I started looking at meditation and mindfulness and realizing that I was separate from my thoughts, separate from my emotions, and that I had this higher self that was actually observing this human part that was doing this thinking. And then I started to look at my emotional self and my physical self and started to do more alternative health and healing. So I started looking at like massage and Reiki, acupuncture. I even went to Chinese medical school for a year. I delved into Ayurvedic medicine for about a year. And each of these things started to unfold and teach me more about who I was and what my purpose was. But there was still something that was missing. So then I went back to school while I was working and traveling full time, and I got a master's in spiritual psychology from University of Santa Monica. And that school really started to connect the dots for me. It made me realize what the mission of the school was that I wasn't a human being having intermittent spiritual experiences, but that I was a spiritual being having a very human life, a human life of wondering who I was as a spiritual being. And so that started to become my mission. And what I realized was I was still kind of in the closet. I was still living a little bit compartmentalized, but I was starting to stretch and lean in a little bit more and share more about who I was and my work. And when I really finally leaned in and took that risk and started sharing with people what was happening inside of me, what I started to receive was that a lot of other people were feeling that same way. So at that point in my career, I had gotten to a pretty great level where I was being sent in on special projects to find out what was happening with data compromisation, et cetera. And so I would sit down with these cardiologists, surgeons, top researchers in the field, and I would say, something doesn't sit right with me about what you're telling me. I know that like your data seems compromised. I know that your staff is really unhappy, but I'm curious about what's happening inside of you. What's going on? Because I've been through this journey myself. And then a lot of these very important people, these VIPs, would start opening up to me about what was going on in their own life. They were going through a divorce, or their son was strung out on heroin, or they never really wanted to be a business owner or a manager of all these people. They just wanted to do research. And so what I started to do was really bridge that gap that I was experiencing, and doing that for other people through a business of coaching. So I was still doing the pharmaceutical research. I started doing coaching on the side, and so you would think that that's probably where my story ends, but that's actually just where it starts. So I was having all this fulfillment. It was great. I was doing both things. And then fast forward 7 years, I became a single mother. I met a great man. We had another baby. We got the home, we got the dog. I had these 2 businesses. He had a very full work travel schedule. And I started to notice that thing coming up inside again. And I wondered, oh no, these pesky questions of like, who am I? What am I doing? And is this really all there is? And that second time around, I had a lot more guilt, because I had 3 of the things that I really deeply desired when I was in that previous time in my life. I really wanted to have children, and I really wanted to have a partner. And so I started to feel a little bit more guilt of like, how could I still be asking these questions? And is there something wrong with me? And then I also had a lot more fear the second time around, because I was basing my experience on what I had experienced the first time around, which included a lot of research, a lot of experimentation, and a lot of tangible and physical spiritual work to answering those questions for myself. And I thought to myself, I'm a mother, I'm a business owner, I'm a wife. I don't know if I have time to answer these questions again. And then I also started to be met with those types of people that were feeling like they had these questions with families, with businesses, but they didn't know if they had the time or the energy to actually answer those questions again, even though they deeply, deeply desired to. And so what started to happen was I thought, okay, I'm just going to put this on the back burner and not really think about it and just go on living my life and just being in gratitude for what I do have: money in the bank, a home, great family, loving friends. And then that started to actually perpetuate and get worse. I don't know if anybody has that experience of like when you just try to put something behind you, it actually gets bigger in order to get your attention. And so that became more of my mission of like, how do I not let this thing get so big that I have to get cancer, or I have to get sick, or I have to get divorced in order to pay attention and wake up? And so that was the conversation that I started having with people was, I'm feeling this way, and I know I need to wake up, and I just don't know what to do. And coaching was great. I love coaching. It's amazing. There's so many levels of the mental, the emotional, the physical, and the spiritual that I do in my coaching. But I was praying for something that was effective, that was efficient, and that was profound, and that could be done in a very quick amount of time. And so I said, I don't have a lot of time to go train for triathlons or to go get a master's or to do all these other things that I did when I was single. I wanted to wake up, and I wanted it to be efficient. And literally a week later, a friend of mine who I had actually coached for a couple of years, he said, I've been doing something secret and something on the side, and I haven't told anybody about it because I don't know what people are really going to think, but I want you to come experience it because I love you and I care about you. And then that started to unfold this huge thing in my life, which is now called breath work. And so I went to his class. There was a few of us there. And all we did was a 3-part breath over the course of 20 minutes, 10 minutes of meditation afterwards. You would think, okay, great, just like a yoga class. Nothing like a yoga class, nothing like a 20-year meditation practice that I'd had up until that point, or a 15-year yoga and Kundalini practice. This breath work cracked me open and really allowed me not only to observe that spiritual being that I was, but to really embody it and experience it wholeheartedly for the first time in my life. Probably gonna get tearful just thinking about it. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, like I want to share this with people. Like this was amazing. And what I noticed also too was so much was coming up with this breath work that I didn't actually know what to do with it. And my teacher was like, don't think about it too much, don't process it, don't go back into analyzation, which I could appreciate. And there was really nobody in my coaching world that had been doing this type of breath work and coaching. And so I thought, this is how I want to serve people. This is my next purpose. And so that's what I do a lot now, is I hold that experience for people to have their ethereal self and really embody it and experience it, sometimes for the first time in their lives. And I had done certain things in my life. I had a past with like drugs and alcohol and ayahuasca and all different types of things. But what I loved about breath work was that it was natural. It was inside of me. It was not a healer outside of me. It was my breath. It was my healing. It was my medicine. It was my insights, and it was my downloads. It was my own shamanic journey. And I wanted to be able to give people that experience also. And so what I found was that it would be so great to have some type of human tangible level that could really bring these huge ethereal insights into my human life. And so I just started coaching myself in that way, and how would I support other people that are doing that? So after I went through the breathwork training and started to bring this into circles and into classes and also into coaching clients, I really started to realize that this is the thing that people have been looking for. It's great to be aware of our thoughts. It's great to be connected to our emotions. It's great to have consciousness of our own internal boardroom. It's great to have consciousness of our own internal team. See, it's like we have all these little personalities inside of us. We have all these people that are seeking, that are asking questions, that are doubting, that are wondering. But at the head of the table is us. And we get to be the leader. We get to be conscious of all of these things, and we get to lead our lives, whether it's through work, through being a stay-at-home mom, or being a CEO. And then I started to bring that into people and into their lives. I noticed that from doing some research that 43%, I was so surprised when I found this statistic, 43% of all adults suffer from stress-related ailments, and that 90% of doctor visits are related to stress. And that OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Association, deems stress as a workplace hazard. So much that it costs the American work industry $300 billion annually because of stress-related ailments and complaints. And so I thought to myself, I have this huge corporate experience. I understand what it's like to be compartmentalized. I understand what it feels like to be a seeker and to want to bring that into my work life. So why not serve that community? And so what I've been finding is that by having just small conversations and reaching out to people that feel aligned, that want to make a difference in their corporate world or in their company or even in their own internal company of themselves, is that people are starting to meet that stress exactly where they are. And that was also my experience. I was having this amazing, great life, but there was also this low-level chronic stress that was going on between wanting to feel calm versus chaos, wanting to feel pleasure versus obligation, wanting to feel trust versus anxiety as a worker and as a mother. And that's what the thing that I loved about breath work was that it was efficient, it was effective, and it was profound, and it met me with that same level of intensity as what I was actually feeling inside. That's another thing that I've found through meditation, is that a lot of times people will come to me and say, I love meditation, it's great, I just wish that it could take me to where I really want to go, or it could meet me where I am, but sometimes I'm so stressed out that I can't even actually do it. And so there's a couple of things that I like to offer. One is just simple breathing, and I know that it's been talked about so far this weekend, and it's just a coherent breathing exercise that you can do when you are sitting here, you can do when you're eating lunch, you can do when you're at your desk or you're sitting in a boardroom, or when you're sitting with a toddler who's having a tantrum. And it really just entails breathing in over the count of 4, holding it for 7, and then exhaling over the count of 8. So coherent breathing, just doing that 3 times, it just brings your nervous system down, it calms your mind down. And then if you're ready for something even deeper, you can do this breath work. So this 3-part breath that I do in circles and workshops and that I bring into corporate environments. And the last thing is really about, consciousness. It's about being that conscious leader in your life. And one of the biggest things that breath work has taught me is that I had a belief that was operating that once I finally got there, then and I answered those questions of who am I, what is my purpose, and what am I actually doing here, that I would be okay. And what I learned through breath work is that that question isn't probably ever going to stop, and that there's actually nothing wrong with me that it keeps coming up. It's actually a really beautiful, wonderful thing. See, it's like my logo is this wave. And what I love about this wave is that it starts off very imperfect, just kind of like us. We're human. We live at this very human level. But at the core of it, we build momentum, and then we start to sweep up and come to like fruition. But then there's this huge open space in the logo, and that's kind of where we meet ourselves again, and then we just get to come back through, starting off small, a little imperfect, and the whole circle is a little imperfect because that just represents who we are as humans. And so, for my mission and my purpose is really to cultivate space for not only myself, but for you to be able to wake up, to trust that intuition, to tap into pleasure versus obligation, and to do it just through simply your breath and being conscious of who you are and what you're supposed to be doing here. So thank you so much for coming today, and it was lovely to see you. If you have any questions, I'll be at booth number 806 and 808. I also have virtual coaching, I have one-on-one coaching and breath work. I'm going to be doing a free breath work session today if you're interested at 2 p.m. and another one at 5 p.m. And I also have a workshop in Long Beach at Go Inward on April 21st from 2 to 4 p.m. So if you want to come and touch base, we can talk more, but I just want to be honoring the time that we have here and honoring your time. So enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.